will walk the valley with you by our side. You will go before us, you will lead the way. We have found a refuge only you can save. Sing with joy now, our God is for us. The Father's love is a strong and mighty fortress. Raise your voice now, no love is greater. Who can stand against us if our God is for us? Even when I stumble, even when I fall, even when I turn back, still your love is sure. You will not abandon, you will not forsake. You will cheer me onward with never-ending grace. Sing with joy now, our God is for us. The Father's love is a strong and mighty fortress. Raise your voice now, no love is greater. Who can stand against us if our God is for us? Neither height nor depth can separate us. Hell and death will not defeat us. He who gave his Son to free us holds me in his love. Neither height nor depth can separate us. Hell and death will not defeat us. He who gave his Son to free us holds me in his love. Sing with joy now, our God is for us. The Father's love is a strong and mighty fortress. Raise your voice now, no love is greater. Who can stand against us if our God is for us? Sing with joy now, our God is for us. The Father's love is a strong and mighty fortress. Raise your voice now, no love is greater. Who can stand against us if our God is for us?
the goodness of you, God.
Hallelujah.
This is the start of resurrection, when new beginnings come from death. I'm gonna trust you with my future. Lord, I surrender to your plans. I leave my heart open, open to you. I'm holding back nothing, nothing from you. I leave my heart open to you. I'm holding back nothing, nothing from you. Do whatever you want to. Do whatever you want to. Do whatever you want to. Shake up the ground of all my tradition. Break down the walls of all my religion. Your ways better. Your ways better. Shake up the ground of all my tradition. Break down the walls of all my religion. Your ways better. Your ways better. Shake up the ground of all my tradition. Break down the walls of all my religion. Your ways better. Your ways better. Shake up the ground of all my tradition. Break down the walls
This morning as we go to the Bible, I'm going to be reading in Revelation chapter 2. Revelation chapter 2, and this is part of a series of 7 things Jesus says to 7 different churches. And this is written and addressed to the church in a city called Smyrna. So Revelation chapter 2, we'll begin reading at verse 8 and continue through verse 11. Revelation 2, verse 8. And to the angel of the church in Smyrna, write, and here's what John was supposed to write, the words of the first and the last who died and came to life. I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich, and the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested, and for 10 days you will have tribulation. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. The one who conquers will not be hurt by the second death. If you look up the city of Smyrna on a modern day atlas, you won't find it listed in any nation, but if you travel to the nation known as Turkey, right, large country, you can still find the city of Smyrna. It's a large city, has 3 million people, but it's not called Smyrna. It's called Izmir, I-Z-M-I-R. And again, 3 million people, so it's a significant sized city. And it's exactly the same city that Smyrna was, just with a different name. It has existed continually for thousands and thousands of years. But if you go there today and you walk around as a tourist and see the sights and kind of take in what's going on, you'll see that it's significantly different than it was back in the first century when the book of Revelation was being written. Back then Smyrna was famous for being one of the most beautiful cities in the region of the Roman Empire known as Asia Minor. People would come just to look at it. That's how magnificent it was in its beauty. And it was also known as being a very wealthy city, and that was because it was located at a central point. On to the west, there was the city of Rome, and merchants coming out of Rome looking to buy stuff from other parts of the world to take back to Rome would come through Smyrna and stay there on their way to Persia, which we now know as Iran, because there was a lot of products going back and forth. And so with all of these really, really wealthy merchants coming through Smyrna and staying there and setting up a base of operations, the city became very, very wealthy. Many millionaires, or the equivalent thereof, lived in Smyrna. A lot of money. And then something else that Smyrna was famous for, and I'm giving you detail because it's going to kind of come into play in understanding what this passage is about, is that it was famous for being very, very loyal to Rome. You see, it wasn't originally part of the Roman Empire. The Romans had taken that part of the world over, and the people of Smyrna hadn't fought it. They hadn't resisted it. They accepted it. They said, we want to be Romans. We want to be part of the empire. And to prove their loyalty to Rome, they participated in Caesar worship. Now that sounds crazy to pray to a man, Caesar, right, the Roman Empire, but yet this was part of what they did. And you've heard me describe this in other teachings in other cities, and that Smyrna participated in this. And once a year in the center of the city, in the city square, they always had this huge altar, and once a year they would build a fire on that altar, and they would have a large basin filled with sweet-smelling incense. And everybody in Smyrna above the age of, let's say, children, by the time they were teenagers and older, and if they could walk, every citizen of Smyrna was expected on that day to go down to the city center. And there were people there checking who was there. They took attendance, so to speak. And you would come up and you would go up to the basin where the incense was, and you would take just a little pinch of this sweet-smelling incense, and you would take it over to the altar and drop it in the fire, and it would release that fragrance. And then out loud, so the people who were watching could hear you, you would say these words, "Caesar is Lord." And if you didn't do that, and it was noticed, your absence was noticed, there would be consequences. So they were extremely loyal to Rome. And they didn't just only pray to Caesar, because the way Roman religion worked, you could have many gods. And if you would have been in Smyrna in those days, you would have noticed, and it's still this way, kind of like the city of Denver on a smaller scale. We all know that Denver is kind of built in a valley, right, surrounded by the Rocky Mountains. Smyrna was that way without mountains that big, but there were hills all the way around the city. And what had happened over the years is that the people of Smyrna, especially those who had wealth and who were wanting to prove their loyalty to their gods, had built some of the most architecturally beautiful temples to those gods all the way around the city. And so you could walk into Smyrna at any point where you could see a hillside, you would see a temple. And there were just so many of them. And because they were so beautiful and so large, they stood out, and they were essentially known as landmarks in that part of the world, because that's how well known they were. All these gods. So that's kind of just a thumbnail sketch of what Smyrna was like in the first century. Number one, it was very, very beautiful. Number two, it was very wealthy. Number three, it was very loyal to Rome. And number four, it was famous for its worship of pagan gods. Now, if you've read the book of Revelation, then you know that chapters 2 and 3 are dedicated to Jesus. Again, I touched on this already. Jesus speaking to a series of 7 churches. There was Ephesus first, and then Smyrna, which we just read. Then he speaks to the church in Pergamum. These are all cities. Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and finally Laodicea. And of the 7 churches, 5 of them he criticizes. He says, I have this against you. This is what you're doing wrong. But there were 2 that he didn't say anything against them, didn't criticize them, and those 2 were Philadelphia and Smyrna. And the reason he didn't criticize the church in Smyrna was actually quite simple. First of all, they were a very small church that had been through a lot of struggles, and the way Jesus describes what they had been through, it's clear that he knew that their suffering, what they had endured for the cause of the gospel, had made them strong in their faith. And I want to kind of walk through a little bit of what Jesus says to kind of show you what I'm talking about here. And first of all, we'll read the beginning of verse 9, where Jesus says to this church, I know your tribulation. Now, that's an interesting Greek word. We don't use the word tribulation a whole lot in conversation today. We know what it means, but it's not something we talk about much. But in Greek, in the Greek language that this was written in, the word tribulation didn't just describe ordinary troubles in life. It was used to describe what you and I would call catastrophic pressure. In fact, the word in other contexts was used to describe somebody who had died being crushed by a boulder. That's tribulation, right? The kind of pressure that just takes the everything out of you. And so, and some of you understand that. You've been at places in your life where the situation got so bad that you felt utterly defeated. You felt like all was lost. And so, and you understand this word. You know what it means to, let's say, have the enemy closing in on every side and to not know what you're going to do. That's what these Christians had been through. Again, let's talk about their situation. They were poor. We'll talk about that in a second. They were living in a city filled with very wealthy people. And in most times of history, in most parts of the world, and we still see it some in our own country today, those who are poor and dispossessed often will suffer and be oppressed at the hand of those who have money and power. It's not as prevalent in the U.S. It's somewhat here. But in other parts of the world, this is life. The poor suffer because they're poor and for no other reason. And in fact, if you keep reading in verse 9, Jesus touches on this. I know your tribulation and your poverty. Now, if you study the American legal system and the Western European legal system, you know that a lot of our justice system came from Rome. We took a lot of what they did and copied it and modified it. And because it was a pretty good legal system, at least on paper, but when you go back and study history, you find out that Roman justice was oftentimes corrupt. If you knew the right judge, or if you had enough money to make the right payment, you could get the court decision that you wanted. And so that's why I was saying that the situation of the Christians in Smyrna was difficult, because those who were weak and poor and had no power often suffered at the hands of those who were wealthy. So that was their first issue they're dealing with. And then something else that comes in on them later. A lot of these merchants and traders who had come into Smyrna, and again were very wealthy, a lot of them were Jewish. Now, why do we care? Because these Jewish people who came in saw these Christians who came out of Judaism, right? And they didn't appreciate what these Christians had done to the Jewish religion. They said, well, you've created this Messiah, this man Jesus, we don't accept him. And so there was this resentment. And so many of the Jewish people living in Smyrna, powerful people, wealthy people, joined in persecuting the Christians because these Jews saw these Christians as a threat. They're saying, you're taking our God, the God of Israel, and you're turning him into something that he is not. So let's read the rest of verse 9. I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich, and the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. That's really strong language, but it's what Jesus says. So you're really getting a feel now for who these people were, these Christians in this little church, poor, powerless, oppressed, persecuted, and in terms of their physical situation, their economic situation, just their daily life, there's no reason for them to expect anything is going to get better. That's how the ancient world worked. In our nation, we have chances for upward mobility. You can start with nothing, and there's no guarantee you'll move up in the world, but you're probably going to have a chance or two to make it. It doesn't happen for everybody, but we all know people that are CEOs today that started in the mailroom of the corporation to work their way up. If you'd have been alive in Rome in the first century, that almost never happened. If you were born poor, you would stay poor and you would die poor. If you were born in the class of the oppressed, you would stay there and you would die that way. There was no reason for them to expect life is going to get better. And yet, in the middle of verse 9, Jesus says something, and I've been kind of passing over it. Now I want to stop and emphasize it. He says something to them that would have made them stop and think. Again, verse 9, I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich. Interesting, right? And you can see why his words would have made people stop and think, because on the one hand, they knew they were poor. They had nothing. These were the people on the bottom rung of the ladder of society. They had nothing extra. They had no margin in their life, and yet Jesus describes them as rich. The same word means wealthy. Rich and wealthy. Now, why would he do that? Well, it all has to do with the perspective you have, right? If this world is all there is, right? If there's no afterlife, if there's no heaven, if the kingdom of God doesn't exist, if all there is in our life is this world, and then we die and it's over, then what Jesus is saying doesn't make any sense, right? What good is it saying to a group of people, you're rich, when they have nothing and it's not going to change, right? That would be a lie. But if there's more to life than this world, and if what Jesus is saying is true, then, this is important, no one who follows Jesus is ever truly poor. Talking in spiritual terms here. And no one who doesn't follow Jesus can ever be truly rich. And I'm speaking again in spiritual terms. I found out that Forbes magazine, well, now they're kind of a website mostly, Forbes.com, they keep a running list of billionaires. And they try to keep it up to date as best you can with billionaires. You know, I'm sure it's hard to track down every penny and every dollar they make. But I looked up, and I checked it this morning to make sure I was right. Who are the richest men in America? And I'm going to name some names that you're all going to know their name. You're going to have heard of them. Let me give you the top three. The third richest man in America is Mark Zuckerberg, and if you know his name, it's because he's the guy that owns Facebook. And he's worth, according to Forbes, $130 $99 billion. And I could live off that. But he's not as rich as Jeff Bezos. And if you know his name, it's because he owns Amazon. He's worth more. He's worth $209 billion. And I think you already can guess who number one is. His name's been in the headlines a lot. Elon Musk. He owns the factory just whichever way north is. I'm not good at directions. That big Tesla factory up north of here, and besides a lot of other stuff that he owns, he is worth $343 billion. So if I was any of those guys, right, or if you were any of those guys, the world would look at you and say, man, you are really, really successful. Because when you have that kind of money, there's almost nothing you can't buy, right? The most expensive thing in the world, you can pick one up. No problem. And you can pick up the phone and you can talk to almost any world leader. They will answer because you have that kind of influence. Anywhere you go, the red carpet is laid out and everyone tells you how amazing you are, how much they admire you, yada, yada, yada. Right? Someday, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk are going to die. They're going to pass from this world and they're going to stand before the God who created them. And on that day, they're going to answer to God and to no one else. Now, I'm not standing up here saying I know where they're going to spend eternity. I don't know. But I can say this. Every person who's ever lived, from Elon Musk to the poorest Christian living in Smyrna some thousands of years ago, every person who has ever lived is going to stand before God. And in that moment, all of the things that impressed people in this life will mean nothing because God operates on a different standard. God judges people differently than we judge each other. I want you to think about that with me. You could be one of those 3 richest men in America. You could have that kind of money. You could be the unquestioned leader in your field, sports, medicine, entertainment. People could see you as unique in history, treat you with respect, speak your name with great degree of reverence and all that. But in the eyes of God, when it comes to eternity, none of that matters, which is illustrated perfectly by this passage in Revelation 2. God looks at this little group of Christians in a little bitty church in the city of Smyrna, and the world would have looked at them and said, man, what a bunch of nobodies, what a bunch of failures. But in God's estimation, which is the only judgment that actually matters, these people were anything but failures. One more time, verse 9, I know your tribulation, I know you've suffered, I know your poverty, you've got nothing, but you are rich. God laughs at the foolish pretensions of those who think they're high and mighty. Because in eternity, your bank accounts, your influence, your wealth won't mean anything. That's how God takes the supposed truth of this world and turns it upside down. You've got this small group of persecuted Christians in Smyrna who were a bunch of nobodies, and God sees through their poverty, and he knew that they were the ones who had actually discovered great riches. Many of you have heard me say this before. It's not original to me. You will never know if Jesus is all you need until Jesus is all you have. And when Jesus is all you have, that's when you discover that he is all you need. Now, if you're like me, that's easy to say, and it's hard to really believe, right? In my head, I believe it. But there's something inside of me that says, yes, but I also, right? I also want this. I also need this. But these Christians in Smyrna were so poor and so dependent on the Lord that they had learned that Jesus was all they need. And so Jesus looks at them, people who have nothing, who are forgotten, who were nobodies, and he says, you are rich. Because no man can be poor when he has learned to depend on God alone. And I'm not speaking in financial terms, I'm speaking in spiritual terms. The truth is, they had suffered terribly. And their suffering would continue for a while. We'll touch on that in a second. But at the same time, God had placed a limit on their misery. Let me read it to you, verse 10. It was going to get worse. Do not fear for what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison that you may be tested, and for 10 days you will have tribulation. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. And there's been a lot of debate, and I'm not going to be able to answer this for you exactly what 10 days means. Did it mean a literal physical 10 days? Was Jesus speaking in terms of a metaphor here, that it was symbolic? And I can't answer that to you. But the point I want to make to you is simply, God had declared a limit to their suffering. Whatever 10 days meant, no force on earth could make it last, listen, 11 days. 10 days. And then it's done. And then it's over. And that's still true for followers of Jesus today. That's true for you. You can be in any situation that's going to be hard, difficult, and that could be part of your life. God never promised that you would have carefree days and earthly happiness and unending material blessings. Sometimes you're going to suffer. Sometimes you're going to struggle, but you're only going to have it happen as far as and as long as, listen, the Lord allows it. When the 10 days are up, it's over. That's not true because I say so. That's true because the Bible says so. Some of you know where I'm going right next. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. No temptation, let me stop there. The Greek word for temptation means also test and trial. Same Greek word, it's got a wide variety of meanings. So you could say no trial, no temptation, no test has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted or tried or tested beyond your ability, but with the temptation, he will also provide the way of escape that you may be able to endure it. There is a limit to what you will go through. Now, I would like to be able to stand up here with some magic spiritual crystal ball and say, all right, I know that in X number of days, everything in your life is going to become sunshine and roses. But I can't, right? I don't have some crystal ball. I don't know the future. I'm not a prophet. I don't know anything. But I do know this, that even if following Jesus costs you everything, the Word of God is clear. The reward you receive will be worth it. It's not true because I say so. It's true because God says so. The end of verse 10, Revelation chapter 2, be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life.
Amen.
Whatever you're going through, no matter how hard it is, how painful, and you think these 10 days of suffering will go on forever, listen. Don't judge your life by the standards of this world. The world measures success in foolish ways. The world chases after things that will never satisfy you, whereas God measures success in terms of faithfulness. And the rewards that God gives for faithfulness always satisfy.